Hello. In this video, I continue the Introduction to Coding Web Games using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript series with Part 8. In the previous video, we made some big changes like adding a hero and giving him a way to defend Earth. In this video, we will be adding video game staples like a score, a timer, and a start and pause button. But first, I would like to take a few moments to debug and clean up our code just a bit. So let's do that. If you'll recall, we left our game in this state, but every time we blew up one of the aliens, it actually went through like two little animations. It went through both explosions, and the other aliens would stop flip-flopping. So if you hit one, as you see the other ones, they stopped flip-flopping until you would hit one again. So let's fix that. On line 166 is where we're going to begin. And here, underneath this dot state is equal to this dot hit, we need to make some room, and we need to write this sprite dot state is equal to sprite dot hit, because we weren't setting the sprite's state to hit, so sometimes it was registering twice. That is why it went through. One of the reasons it went through two animations. There's another reason. Next thing we have to do is right here on 177, this hero.write equal false. We don't need that. You can just erase that. I forgot that when you create an attribute and then set it, that creates it. You don't have to create it first and then later on the line you go and set it. Once you create and set it, it does it all at once. So we can just get rid of that part. Now, down here in our big long for else loop, this part, the if this dot count is remainder 10 is equal to 0, flip-flop this, that could come out of the for loop. Take it out, put it right above the rest of this logic here, right there outside the for loop. Let me format. And we have to add to it this and, so double ampersand, and this dot state is not equal to this dot hit. This is very important that if something gets hit, you always got to change its state to hit and then check to make sure that things are not hit before you double up, which is why we're getting all these double animations. Things are getting hit twice. Okay, we also need this these four if statements, this logic, this can come right outside too, right up above where we just put that other if statement, this one. So that can come over here, reformat, make sure everything's nice and tidy. Then we can just completely erase this else statement. It is not necessary. Let me get rid of this space here. Okay, so now you should have pretty code, looks like this. It could look better, but this is great for now. This is wonderful. Okay, we're not quite done. Up in shoot, where it says sprite.type is equal to alien, we need to add some more logic in there. Again, we need to make sure that we're not checking against things that have already been hit. So we need to write and this dot state does not equal this dot hit. And not only do we need to check to make sure we're not double hitting our shot, we need to double check that we're not double hitting our sprite. So sprite dot state does not equal sprite dot hit. Okay, so now we're only registering a hit with our shots if it hasn't already been hit. If both the shot and the alien haven't already been hit. And look at that. Now it's nice and clean and it runs how I intended. It's a little easy though. It's very easy just to spam the space bar. We'll change that in a moment. My next improvement is going to be instead of having all the aliens show up kind of off the screen, I'm going to have them start from the top above the screen, above the canvas, I mean, excuse me, and then kind of rain down on me. So type exactly what I have here. Put let num equal math.floor. So I want a whole number from a decimal point. I'm about to get a decimal point. I want to drop the decimal and just get the whole number. The decimal point is going to be canvas.width divided by what is actually the width of our aliens, which I know to be 60. So what that's going to do is that's going to set num to how many of my aliens I could fit in my canvas side by side, which will actually be 8. Because my canvas is 500 and they're 60. So then I set var x to canvas.width divided by that number in parentheses, and then I multiply that by some random number. So we say get random num, and I want to go from 0 up to but not including that number. So this will be from 0 to 7, since num is actually 8 in this case. It'll give me a random number from 0 to 7 and multiply the width. So what this is going to do is it's going to set the aliens across the top of my canvas, but spaced out randomly but evenly. Now for var y, it's easy. I just want to come up to 0, which is the canvas, and then go pull it back further another 60, so negative 60. And that'll put every alien just above the canvas. Now I can call make alien, and all I have to do is just submit the x and the y. We're going to refactor a little bit here because I'm going to use this more than once. But for now, see, there we go. Now they're all kind of randomly spaced on the top, but also evenly spaced. Oh, it's so easy just to kill them. So what I want to do is, every time I shoot an alien, I want another alien to spawn up there. So let's pull this out and refactor it. So we can create a function called attack. Because we already have one called make alien, and I don't want to call this make aliens, so I just said attack. And then within that, you can put all this logic right there. So now, every time you call attack, it's going to create one alien and put it somewhere above our screen within the x and the y coordinates. So up here, it's going to call 10 aliens. It's going to make 10 of them if you call the attack 10 times. So you're going to have a minimum of 10 aliens on your screen at all times. Because down here, where we destroy an alien, now every time one is destroyed and gets removed from our sprite array, we can call attack like that, and it will create a new one up above the canvas somewhere. So now there should be a steady stream, and there will be 10 aliens at all times. If I had run that loop for 20 aliens, then there would be 20 aliens at all times. 15 would be 15 aliens at all times. You get the picture. But now there's, since I run it 10 times, there's 10 aliens at all times. You can count them there. And they all start evenly spaced, sort of up at the top, but also randomly spaced up at the top. And they rain down. Okay. So I believe what I do next is I rein in the amount of bullets that I can fire to 3, because spamming the space bar is just so easy to annihilate those aliens. And it's easy to do up here, right underneath hero. Let's just do something called let shots equal 0, and that's just going to be a number to keep track of how many shots we fired. And then every time you make a shot, so down in shoot, every time you make that shot, you're going to need to increment shots up by 1, so shots plus plus. That means it'll add 1, 1 every time you shoot. Then every time you destroy a shot, meaning pull it out of the sprite array like this, you're going to want to increment down. So shots negative, shots minus minus. That'll bring it down. Every time you destroy a shot, shots will get less. So, okay, I've also realized that down here, we are keeping track of these shots, even if they go far off of our canvas. We're still keeping track of them. So what we wanted to do is we want to check to see that if this dot y is less than negative 20, that means it's gone off of our screen far enough that we can erase it from our array. Like, we don't want to draw it anymore. It's off of our canvas. And I think I got this backwards. Actually, I want to check if this dot y is greater than negative 20. That means it's still kind of on our canvas. You can still see a portion of it, so you still want to draw it. That's why you still want to do this dot y as minus equals 7, because you're still drawing the shot. But as soon as it gets less than or equal to negative 20, so else, then we want to erase it. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we do up here. And you know what I like to do when I see that I have the exact same code in 2 different spots is I refactor it. I pull it out and I put it in its own function. So we're going to pull this out, and we're going to make a function called first I went with remove shot, but then I remembered I called everything else destroy. So I want to keep it simple, keep everything kind of the same. So I'll say destroy shot. And you're going to need to know which shot you want to destroy, because there's a lot of them. So you accept the shot as a parameter. Then now you can put this logic directly in there, except that everywhere it says this, now you need to say shot. And then now everywhere you have that logic, you can put just destroy shot. And you have to send a shot. And in this case, since we're calling it from within the shot itself, we can just say this. So destroy this. And then again, up here where we destroy the shot up there, same thing. Okay. So now it'll add to shots when we fire, and it'll take away from shots when we destroy one. Plus, it'll destroy the shots if they go off the top of the canvas. And you can't really tell. It looks the same for now. But what that allows us to do is that allows us to keep track of exactly how many shots we have on the screen at any given time. So here, when you fire, you can say, not only are we checking to see if hero.state is not equal to hero.hit, but and shots is less than 3. So if shots is less than 3, only then will it shoot. But if shots is at 3, it won't shoot until 1 is removed from the array. As soon as 1 is removed from shots, not the array, sorry, the number. As soon as shots goes minus minus, then it allows you to shoot again. And that gives the effect of always being able to only have 3 shots at a time. Pew, 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 pew. It's classic. And it adds just that little level of difficulty to your game. So it's a little more interesting. Okay, now we're going to add game states. We're going to add states to our game just like we'd add states to an object. So we're going to say let our first state is going to be called playing. So let playing, all capitals, equals 0. And then we're going to say let paused, as in the game is paused, let that equal 1. So these are 2 states, playing and paused, and we have another one called over, as in game over, and we're going to let that equal to 2. Now we have to actually set the game state. So we create another variable called game state. Say let game state. Well, we can actually just set that equal to paused now, because paused is equal to 1. So now game state is equal to 1, technically, but we've said it's equal to paused, which is the same thing. We're also going to need a score to keep track of our score, and we're also going to need a timer. Well, you don't have to, but for this game, we're going to have a timer. And you set it equal to the number of seconds you want. So I put that at 15 just to keep it short for this video's purposes. Okay, now that we have all that, we can do some things. And we're going to be writing a long stretch of code here for a minute. Well, actually, first, let me check to make sure that my game states are working. And by doing that, go into your render and tell your render at the very top if game state is equal to playing, meaning if the game is actually in play. So game state triple equal to playing. Then in case everything that was already in there within the braces, so everything that was already in there goes inside your if statement. So now it will only draw everything if you're playing. Else, you want to do something else. Now here's something we haven't done before. You can write another if statement, and it's called an else if statement. So you can say if this, else if something else. So say else if game state is equal to paused, you want to do something else. And now the final else, which is kind of like the default, you don't need an if after that. So you can just say else. And then we're going to do something else if it's not that. Because if it's not paused, if it's not playing, then it's over. But okay, so in game state is equal to pause, what we're going to do is we're not going to draw every sprite. We're just going to draw the very, very first sprite, which we happen to know is the background. Since it's the very first thing, that image we create, it's the very first sprite in our sprite array. So it is at index 0. That is the very first index in our array, because it starts 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So if I say sprite array 0, and then I call its draw function, so dot draw, I know it's only going to draw the background. So if it's set to pause correctly, there you go. It only draws the background now, and everything else goes away. It's also static. It's not redrawing every frame. I don't want to just have an empty picture. Let's at least tell people that the game is paused. So I'm going to show you how to write some text up on the screen. And to do that, it's going to be a fill. So you have to give it a fill style, a color. So say context.fillStyle is equal to, and I like to use yellow for all my games because it's kind of like video gamey. So there you go. Now it'll give you yellow text. But you know what? We're going to be using this for all of our text, so we can actually pull it out and just put it up here. And so we don't have to keep changing it. Now they're all going to be yellow. We just put it up here, and all the letters will be yellow. So okay, back down where we were in the paused, else if game state equals paused. Now we can do context.font. And this is where we're going to set the size of our font and like what kind we want. So in quotation marks, as a string, say bold, space, 50px, meaning pixels, space, Arial, capital A. So now we've set how big our font is and how much, or how tall we want. Sorry, my dog's here. Okay, now we can say context.fillText with a capital T, and it takes 3 parameters: the actual text or the string you want to write, which in this case is paused. Then it takes an X and a Y. Where do you want to write it? And this is kind of weird because it's X coordinates like a rectangle. So if you want it in the center, which we do, you send it, again, canvas.width divided by 2. That gets you to the middle of your canvas. Then you have to come back by half of however long your word is. And there's a way to do that. So in parentheses, write minus context dot measure text. Hold on, I'm sorry. Write exactly what you see there. I'm sorry, my dog was stealing stuff out of the trash can. Say context.measureText, and then you have to give it what text you want to measure, and you say .width. Unfortunately, there's not one for the height, and you don't want the whole width, you only want it half, so you say divided by 2. Now this will be in the center X coordinate wise, but you still need a Y coordinate. So canvas.width divided by 2 minus context.measureText.width divided by 2, and the text is paused. So then now for your Y coordinate, you say just the middle of the canvas, because I said text was weird, so its Y, the middle of its Y is actually in the center like a circle. So all you have to pass is the canvas.height divided by 2, and that'll put it in the center of your canvas. Now if we've done this right, we should have big word paused right in the middle of that, just like that. Okay, so now people know it's paused. Now we need to give them a method to start the game once it's been paused, or once the game starts and it starts off paused, they want to be able to start the game. So under the canvas tag in your HTML file, right here, open and close some button tags. Don't forget your / in the closing tag. Now, within the opening button tag, give it an ID. Say ID is equal to, and we're going to call this one start button. And within the tags, not within the tag, but between the tags, give it some inner HTML of capital START, capital start. And that's what's going to be written on your button. And if you don't give it any CSS, it just kind of shoves it up to the right, up against the right side of your screen. So we're going to go into our CSS, and remember, we have an ID of start button. That's going to be important because you see these are HTML tags and a body tag, so they don't need anything before them. But since you're doing an ID this time, you have to give it a hashtag or number sign, whatever you want to call this. So you say hashtag start button, and then the curly braces. And within that, we're going to give it a position, a key name position, and then we're going to give it a value of relative. Then the next key name is top with a value of 20 pixels. That'll bring it 20 pixels down. And then left. Okay, so since I know I'm at the far right of my canvas, and I know my canvas is 500 pixels wide, and I want to be at the left, I know I just have to come to the left 500 pixels, and on the screen, remember, to the left means negative. So I say left, negative 500 pixels. And that should put my button just at the bottom left of my canvas. Boom, just like that. Okay, but it doesn't do anything when you click it. So now, we go into our JavaScript file, and all the way down at the bottom where we have our other event listeners, because I like to keep all of my event listeners together, we're going to put, first you have to grab the start button off of your HTML document. So let's create a variable, and we'll call it let start button. And then we're going to set that start button equal to something. And when we pull something off the document, first we call the document. So we say document, and we tell it to do something. We say get something, get an element. So get the element by its ID. So get element by ID, capital E, capital B, capital I. And in parentheses, you put the quotation marks. And in those quotation marks, you give it the ID that you set everything, set the element to, which is start button. Now that we have the element into a variable, we can use that variable to call the element like this. We say start button dot, and then we want to add an event listener. So add event listener, and we need to tell it a specific event to listen for, remember. And this time we're listening for a click. We're listening for when a user clicks that button, not click, click, click. When a user clicks a button, we want to call a function, and we're going to call that function, we're going to name it start game. We haven't written it yet, but we will in just a moment. And then of course don't forget your comma false. Every time you add an event listener, you need to set it to false there at the back. Okay, so usually I would write start game right above my event listener, but I have all of my stuff for start game that I want to put in there. It's all up here, like this make hero and this var loop attack, all that stuff. So for now, I'm just going to set that aside, and I'm going to write all my start game function stuff. And there's going to be an end game and a pause game. So we'll write all that here, and we're going to write all that out in just a little marathon of coding. Follow along. If you don't understand something, just know that it'll work out in the end. Just follow exactly as I do here. So write function start game, capital G, open close parentheses, open close curly braces. Within the curly braces, we definitely, let me comment this out just for now, so I know that I'm reminding myself that I need to put that logic into my start game at some point, but not yet. First, I need to set the game state to playing, because when you start the game, you are now playing the game, so game state will equal playing. After that, I want to do something with that start button. Instead of having two buttons, I always like to just use one button and make it do other stuff. So I've already set it into a variable called start button, so I can just say start button, and then I want to change the inner HTML. Remember where we wrote the word start? And I want to change it to paused. So now the button, every time you click the start button, it will change it to, it'll say paused. Actually, I need to change that later and take the D off, but that's okay. So after that's changed, I can say start button, and then I have to remove the event listener. And I'm not adding one this time, I'm removing the one that I did add already. So you give it the same event to listen for, click, and then you tell it which function it no longer needs to call. If you'll recall, we had told it to start game. So remove that. And then after you removed it, then you can add a second one or a different one. Start button dot add event listener this time, and it's going to be a click listener. So we say click, and then comma. And this time we're going to tell it, now that it's a pause button, we're going to tell it to pause the game. I know I wrote it's going to be a paused button, but it means pause. And then don't forget your false. Okay, so let's actually write this pause game real quick before we forget, because it's super easy. So come up just before start game and write function pause game, open close parentheses, open close curly braces. Don't forget your open curly braces like I did just then. Then if it's paused, obviously you want to set the game state to paused. Then you want to set this button back to where it was. So you can kind of just copy this, but we're gonna change it around here. For instance, we want it to go back to saying start, because it's going to be the start button again. And where we remove, now we can add, and where we added, now we can remove. But remember, when you add an event listener, you got to put your false in there, and when you remove one, you don't need it. Plus, you have to remove the event listener before you can add the next one. So like that. There you go. So now we're just reversing everything we did back to where it was. And that's our pause game. So now we can go back to the start game now that we've written that and we've got it where we want it. And underneath where we were, we're going to check on some logic. Every time you start a game, you're going to want to double check, I think, that your timer, I'm sorry, that your hero is indeed, like, not there. Or that timer has made it to 0. Because that means if your hero has been destroyed or if the timer's gone down to 0, that means it was truly game over. The game has been over. Not just paused. Because we're going to use start game for both coming back from, after you pause it, we start the game again. And we don't want it to like start the game over every time. So we want to double check and say, if there's no hero and the timer's equal to 0, that means the game has officially ended and we need to start over. So you do things like you set the score equal to 0. Just to double check, and you set the timer back equal to, I put 30 here, and then I come back later and set it back to 15 because 30 is too long for this video. But these are things you got to do when you know for a fact that you are starting your game over or starting the game anew, and that's where this logic goes. You know you want to make a hero because he's either been destroyed or the game ended, and you want to start the attack with your initial 10 aliens. If the... Okay, also, when you start the game, whether or not you're coming back from a pause or whether or not you're starting anew, you're going to want to do something called set a timer. And I forgot to set the timer. First, we need something called let timer interval. Up here, right underneath timer, create something called let timer interval. And we're going to use that in our start game. Underneath the if statement, write timer interval is equal to set interval. And set interval is a lot like set timeout, except that it runs over and over and over. So it will do something after a set period of time that you tell it, and then it'll do it again after that same amount of time, a regular interval. Okay, so just like set timeout, you give it a function to do, and then you write comma, and you give it a time. And I want this to run once a second. So if you'll recall, these go in milliseconds. So 1,000 means 1 second. So this will go every second. And every second, I want to check to see if timer is greater than 0. Because if it is, that means the game's still going. So if timer is greater than 0, I want to do something. Oops. If it's not greater than 0, that means time's run out, and I'll do something else. So if it is greater than 0, just say timer minus minus. That means it's going to just bring it down. If it's not greater than 0, that's when the timer has ended, and you want a clear interval, just as it says here, small c, tall I, and you want to clear this interval. So in parentheses, you write timer interval, and that'll stop the clock from counting. You also want to do this if you pause the game. You want to stop the interval from counting down so that your game doesn't end while you've hit the pause button. So you can put it up here at the very bottom of pause game, write clear interval, timer interval, which is why we made it a global state variable. So now down here back in start game, under clear interval, type in end game, parentheses, capital G, don't forget that. We haven't written that yet, which we're going to do that right now. So right here underneath that, write function end game, spell it just like you did, give it open close parentheses, open close curly braces, and then there's a few things we need to do. First, of course, you need to set your game state to over. So game state is equal to over. I know for a fact you want to set shots equal to 0, not an empty array. You want to set it equal back to 0. You're going to do something with the sprite array here. after a moment, but not exactly right now. You also want to set your start button back to start. It may be at start. I'm pretty sure it'll be at pause. So you want to set start. And you notice I had redundant code, so you know what I do with all my redundant code. I pull it out and I put it in its own function. In this case, I made a function called set start. I put my start code in there, and then everywhere that logic was, I can just call set start. So it was there in in-game, and then it was up here in my pause game. All that code can now just be replaced with set start. Okay. So now that we have the game states, we need to do something in render based on those game states. So if game state is equal to playing, we definitely want to draw all of our sprites and let them update themselves and stuff like that. Yes. So I'm gonna I want to also write the timer and the score up in the top left-hand corner. So I've copied just the context.font, context.fill text, and brought it up here. We're no longer going to put it in the center, so that can go away. We're just going to give it a different X and Y, and we're not going to be writing paused either. And you'll notice I changed it from 50 pixels to 20 pixels, so it's going to be small. We just want to come up in the up left-hand corner. We're going to come 3 pixels off the X axis, and then on the Y, you have to come down at least half of your height, which is 20, so we have to come down at least 10, and that puts us on the canvas. And then 3 down from that, so 13. And again, we're not doing pause. This time we're going to write the timer. This is going to be the timer. It's going to be just some little numbers, excuse me, up in the upper left-hand corner of our screen. And as timer changes, so will what is written up there. We also want to do the same for our score. We want to make it a little bit bigger than the timer, so copy paste just like I did, and then change that to 30. And then, okay, so first of all, we're not writing timer. Now we're writing the score. For its Y coordinate, it's going to be a little weird. So we have to come down a minimum of 13, because that'll get us where timer is. Then we have to go down another half to get to the bottom of timer, so that's 23. 10, half of 10 is 20 is 10. 10 plus 13 is 23. Then we have to come down another half of our score, which is 15. So 23 plus 15 is 38. Then another 3, 41, just to give it some space. But I'm going to give it 51 to give it some more space. So all that math just to give it to 51. Just to make sure that the score and the timer aren't right on top of each other. Okay, so that'll print our score and our timer in the top left-hand corner. When the game is over, so this final else statement, copy and paste everything that you did in paused, except instead of writing paused, right? I meant to write game over, but it just says over, but it works for now. But basically now, when the game is over, it's going to write game over, and when the game is paused, it'll write paused. I've made a mistake, and I have forgotten, I think, I put a single equal sign instead of a triple equal sign. So when you're comparing stuff, you have to have either a double or triple equal sign, because if it's a single equal sign, remember you're setting. So I was actually setting timer to 0. There we go. So now look, up in your left-hand corner, you've got a timer that counts down, and you've got a score. The score doesn't do anything just yet, but it's there. You can see it. And the timer does count down, so that's nice. And you'll see that when it gets to 0, it sends the game state to, it calls the in-game function, which sets the game state to over, which then makes the render function stop drawing everything and then just put the word over up on our background, just like that. And then I realized, oh yeah, so when you end the game, you have to do a little bit of maintenance with your arrays, because they're still full of like aliens and stuff. So when you end the game, right here in end game, right where you say shots equals 0. At first, I write sprite away. I do all this, so give me a moment. Let me be wrong for a moment here. You can follow me along and you'll get the same problems that I had. So first I did sprite of sprite array, misspelled sprite array there, lowercase s. And then I wanted to tell it that if type is equal to alien to destroy the alien. So I say if sprite.type is triple equal to alien in the string, then I told it to destroy alien. But for some reason, I think it's because we have that set timeout in destroy alien. It didn't destroy them all very properly, and it like screwed up my program. Which you're about to find out here in a moment. Oh, I'm also realizing that I've set timer to 30 in my start game, which overrides the 15 seconds that I set it at. So I come back in my start game and I set that timer to 15 because I don't want to go 30 seconds every time. There we go. Now it'll be at 15 seconds, not 30. So there you go. Okay. So I have, pardon me, sorry. I have to defend Earth for 15 seconds and then make sure it goes game over, and then now I try to restart the game, and there you go. So you see I still have the hero and I still have all those aliens, so this is where I'm finding out it didn't work. So down here, first of all, I know that I can say if sprite.type is equal to hero, I need to do something as well because I want to take that hero out of there as well. And I just give up with the destroy alien and I just decide to go ahead and splice it out directly. So you say sprite array, call on the sprite array to splice something, and in the parentheses you also call on the sprite array again to give you the index of the hero, just like we do when we destroy it, except this time we don't want it to explode, we just want it to go away. And don't forget your comma 1. So that'll work for the hero. Yeah. Okay. So now I got the hero going. I'm like, oh crud. Well, I need to do the same thing for the aliens because they were just coming at me. So many of them. Ah! There's more. But see, that time it worked because there was no hero. Okay, well, I'm not sure that I ever went back and fixed that. I think this is where I'm fixing it here, though. Hopefully. You know what? I found a much easier... That's what I did. I found a way quicker and easier way to do it. So all you have to do is in the end game say sprite array is equal to an empty array. And that'll get rid of everything, though, even the background. So you have to come here, copy what you do over here when you make image for the background. Just copy that. And after you completely erase the array, you can just put the background back in there. And it's like erasing everything and setting, starting back at zero, not zero, because you still have the array. I mean the background in the array. You still have a sprite array 0 index. It's not elegant, but it works and it's efficient and it's quick too, because it's a lot quicker to just erase everything in an array and set it to empty than it is to go through each one and do something. So there you go. Now every time you restart, you've got a fresh set of aliens and a fresh hero. But not when you pause. When you pause, they still keep moving around. And I'll fix that in my next video. I've just noticed that even though you pause, they keep moving. So all you have to do is go into their update and make sure that they only move when it's not paused. We'll hit that in the next video though. But there you have it. So I don't like just having a 0 up there for the score, just the score. So we're going to do something called concatenate. And what that is if you put a string and a plus sign, and then you add something to that string, it's going to put it in there as a string. So it'll say score colon, and then your score. Okay. Now let's get that score to actually do something, and that's going to be probably the easiest thing we've done all day. Oops, I put a space in there. All you have to do is when you successfully register a collision between a shot and an alien, right, which is right here, you do this. You say score plus equal whatever the heck you want. It could be 10, 100, 1,000, million. It could be 2. It could be negative 10. It could be the square root of 15. Whatever. There you go. Now every time I hit one of those aliens and they're destroyed, the score goes up by 100. And when it goes up, it's automatically updated on the screen. And I believe that's a game. Oh, wait, you know what? The score disappeared. Let me put the score on the end screen in the case that the game state is. Also, I forgot. I wanted to put a shadow color. So this is nice. You're going to learn how to put a shadow behind your text. So you do it just like this. Context.shadowColor, capital C, and we're going to make that black. And then you do context.shadowBlur, and this is how blurry you want the shadow, and I just set it to 5. That's a nice little number. You give it a context.offset, shadow offset X, and this is what it sounds like. It's how far on the x-axis do you want the shadow offset? I want it none because I want it right behind my letters. Same with the Y. Just change the X to a Y and set it to 0. But then when you're done drawing everything, you got to take the shadow blur and the shadow color, and you have to call it again after you're done with everything. So at the bottom of your render, down here, paste that and change it to from black to transparent and from 5 to 0, and that effectively erases it so that it doesn't draw it on all your other stuff. You just want it on the text. And you won't be able to notice it unless you look up in the top left-hand corner, and now that 15 in that score are a lot easier to read, especially when that colon goes above the other little dot. They're easier to read now because they've got a little shadow behind them, making them pop just that much more. I know I go in and I change the game over, change it from over to game over. And then this is where I put the score on. So just copy paste where you draw your score and just put that also down here in the else case, meaning else if game state is equal to over. And there you go. I'm pretty sure that's like the finishing touch for this video. Oh yeah, okay, sorry. I moved the timer and the score down another 2 pixels each just to bring them a little bit further off the top. And then that's it. I don't think I touch it from there. This is the game. Aliens constantly invading Earth, and you've got to defend them. You got 3 shots at a time. You can pause the game when the timer goes down. Your score is shown. It says game over, and you successfully defended Earth. Congratulations. Okay, speaking of congratulations, I'd like to say that on, completing part 8 of this series, you officially coded your first game. All that's left to do is get it onto the web. I'm going to play another one. So in the next video, we're going to do just that. We're going to I'll show you how to embed your game onto a website. And then people can sit there and play it just like they do now. So I hope to see you there.